Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pop Goes the 60s. I am back with John Heaton, and we're going to do another Beatles solo album review. And today we're going to be reviewing Living in the Material World by George Harrison. So, welcome, John.
Hi Matt, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. We are kind of overdue for one of these. I think we've done six. We've done Ram, sometime in New York City, Ringo, 33 and a third, London Town, and Mind Games. We've really knocking them down here.
Good stuff.
Now, living in the material world, I know this is an album that is pretty close to your heart. I got mine a little bit later in life, well, probably late teens, early 20s. I can't quite remember. It didn't really occupy a certain space in my life growing up. But for you, how was it? What is your overall feel for this whole album?
Well, I think I'm right in saying it was one of the first three Beatles solo albums I picked up in terms of a physical copy, and I think I bought it from Harrods when in the days when Harrods had a record department. But I bought it in cassette at the time because as a 14-year-old, it was more easier for me to play cassettes than trying to ask my parents to borrow their record player. So I bought quite a few albums on cassette like that, and it's, for some reason I didn't keep them, which is a shame. But so I've always had a soft spot for this album, probably partly because of that, and partly because I just love the production and I love the songs.
Yeah, this is one album when I was starting to collect Beatles solo stuff. I was expecting quite a lot from this album, being the follow-up to All Things Must Pass. And I kind of, for me, like a lot of the solo albums, there's a few songs I really love and a few songs I really can't stand. And then there's a few songs in the middle. So this is kind of falls into that category for me. And the remix that came out last year, I think was an improvement and a little bit of a better job than what they did with All Things Must Pass. So I know you've got that. We'll talk about that more at the end of the video. But yeah, I guess just some background on this album. 73 was kind of a busy year for the solo Beatles, wasn't it?
Yeah, the busiest since 1970. If you were to pick a highlight year from the 70s, it would either be this year or 1970.
Yeah, and I think that this album was a huge hit. Number one album in the States, number two in the UK, released May 1973, just in time for the summer. Like I said, I think expectations were very high. And I don't know, do you think, I think just coming, how do you top All Things Must Pass? And obviously the concert for Bangladesh was in between here. And I don't know that people were looking for him to top All Things Must Pass. But my contention was that, well, he had almost 3 years to get this together. I don't think I expected it to be stronger.
Well, I remember certain authors like Bob Woofenden saying that he missed the boat because he didn't follow it up earlier. If he'd followed up All Things Must Pass earlier in 71 or 72, he might have had an even bigger hit. But as we said, it was still a big hit. And it was no reason to hurry after having done a triple album and after having done a concert for Bangladesh. I think he was entitled to take his time. And I don't actually find the songs particularly weaker on this album versus the first one, especially if you include the Apple Jam
Hmm.
on the Christmas past.
Yeah, I've always contended that All Things Must Pass would have been better as like a single album. Then we'd have all these tracks to build on for a follow-up. But, I mean, that's hindsight, and we got what we got. And I agree. I think that the whole concert for Bangladesh kind of threw him a little bit. And that was certainly a worthwhile effort and a great, one of the best live albums of the 70s. It doesn't get talked about as much as a live album. Everybody kind of talks about the humanitarian aspects of it, which is all wonderful, blah, blah, blah. But really, I think that's a very fine album. And I think this album is probably considered, I don't know, is this considered his second best solo album? What would you say?
Well, in terms of sales, it was. I mean, amongst the fan base, I think the self-titled album is very highly regarded, and
Hmm.
so it's Cloud Nine. But for me, this is in the top two or three for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, a lot of Harrison's albums, there's that kind of middle ground where I've always said that one of the problems I found with Harrison's work in the 70s was that he stopped rocking. So he's more of an adult contemporary artist. And I always found that to make his stuff a little bit more bland. You know, McCartney and Lennon, they always had a few tracks, they always rocked. And George didn't really continue to do that. I always thought that was kind of interesting.
I don't really think it suits his style. If we think about his best tracks of all time, that quite a lot of them are kind of ballads or mid-tempo numbers. I mean, he's done a few rockers like Wah Wah and stuff, but it's not really his signature tune. So I'm happy for him to be as laid back as he wants to be. And I know
Hmm.
it flew against the tide of what the rest of the music business was doing. And as the 70s wore on, that became more evident probably. But even in 73, I mean, he was fighting against the glitter, um, glam rock kind of movement, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I can't see him ever doing anything like that, which he didn't. He had some colorful trousers along the 70s, but that's about as far as he went. Um, okay, so this album, one of the things I like about it is it's kind of scaled back production wise from All Things Must Pass, which was, this monstrous Spectre sound that a lot of people have commented on over the years. I think this is better, although he gets a little spectery in some spots. But I like the fact that he plays all the guitars on it, and he didn't bother with Clapton on this one. And so I appreciate the musicianship from him on this one. I think more so, and you can hear him more.
Definitely. I mean, I only found out that Eric was playing the lead on half the tracks on All Things Must Pass. Well, I say recently, relatively recently, about 20 or
Mm.
30 years ago. But when I first heard the album, I had no idea, although he was credited. But I'm glad, as you say, he played all of the lead guitar parts here, and I think that's one of the reasons this album is so attractive.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that a little bit when we go into the tracks. First, I just wanted to go over a little bit of the how people reacted to this album because obviously it was a huge hit, and the reviews were mixed. I mean, some very positive, some negative. So let me just read a couple of the reviews here. But before I do that, Harrison was quoted as saying that I wouldn't really care if no one ever heard of me again. I just want to play and make records and work on musical ideas. That was in Record Mirror in April 72, uh, not long after the concert for Bangladesh. So I think he was true to his word there, and he did prefer to. He just did music he liked. He wasn't trying to necessarily please people, I guess. And I do appreciate that for doing his own thing.
Yeah, and there wasn't a great deal of promotion from George himself, although there were huge posters over in the US in particular advertising the album. But I don't think he went out and did interviews as such, and certainly no promo videos.
Yeah, and I don't. He barely needed it for this album because he really came out of the gate strong with the single, which we'll talk about in a bit. But let me just go over a couple of the contemporary reviews. Here's music critic Stephen Holden highlighted a similar comparison between the two ex-Beatles in July 1973, when he deemed Living in the Material World to be, quote, as personal and confessional, unquote, as Lennon's Primal Therapy-inspired Plastic Ono Band album. Yeah, maybe so. And then Holden began his highly favorable review in Rolling Stone with the words, "At last it's here," before hailing the new Harrison album as a pop classic and a profoundly seductive record. Billboard magazine noted the twin themes found throughout the album, the Beatles and their mishmash versus a spiritual undercoat, and described Harrison's vocals as first rate. We've got melody maker Michael Watts. The latter wrote that the most striking immediate impression left by the album concerned its lyrics, which, although solemn and pious at times, were more interesting thematically than those on All Things Must Pass, such that Material World was as personal in its own way as anything that Lennon has done. I agree with that. I think this is where Harrison starts. He is getting very personal. It's not all to everybody's liking. Okay, we got Nicholas Schaffner recognized that in living in the material world, Harrison had devised a luxuriant rock devotional designed to transform his fan stereo equipment into a temple. So we get Schaffner recognizing this religious aspect. I think this is the same thing, the same reason people rip on this album a bit, the preachiness of it. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But a couple of the negative reviews do reflect that. Here we have, okay, this was particularly so in Britain, where by the summer of 1973, author Bob Wolfenden wrote the Beatle bubble had undoubtedly burst, and for each of the former bandmates, his individual pedestal was now an exposed rather than a comfortable place to be. Okay, Illustrated Record, Tyler and Carr bemoaned Harrison's didactically imposing said holy memoirs upon innocent record collectors and declared the album's spiritual theme is almost offensive in its own way as the Lennon and Ono political radicalism on Sometime in New York City. So yeah, we see a really this is where essentially the solo Beatles were ripped on for indulging in their own personal styles, I guess. But I don't know how that could be avoided. You know, McCartney being more sugary, Harrison with the religion, Lennon with the politics, and Ringo with whatever happened to be going on around him, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you can avoid that kind of stereotypical assessment of their solo career at this time. What do you think, John? How do you feel about that whole thing?
Well, I just always remember Tony Tyler doing a similar review in the Melody Maker saying this album is so damn holy I could scream. And a lot of people found that offensive a bit in the same way as they found Slow Train Coming and Saved from Bob Dylan offensive because he was preaching Christianity. And to me, I've never found any of those albums offensive. I don't necessarily have to be a Hare Krishna devotee or a born again Christian to enjoy either album. And I just appreciate the spiritual quest that George is on. And people call it preachy, but actually, if you look at it with hindsight, it's more self-critical than anything else. I mean, there's a couple of songs where he's saying, you know, the Lord loves the one that loves the Lord, and um, there are just a few who bow before you, and a few lines which are preachy, but there's other songs which are completely devotional, and I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I've always found he's the solo guy I listen to the most. And I've always found some of his lyrics and songs just inspiring and uplifting and, you know, making you question the spirituality. And typically I do find it uplifting. So yeah, people, I was a little surprised they were that offended. I mean, this whole religious aspect of the hippie movement took hold in the 70s, you know, after the Jesus Christ Superstar and Godspell. It was very, you know, Jesus Christ was look at this prototypical hippie with the long hair, beard, and, you know, sandals. It kind of started to go in that direction. So I'm a little surprised at some of the responses of some of the critics.
So I think it's better to find religion than to self-destruct. You know, this or to paraphrase what Neil Young said, you know, is it better to burn out than it is to fade away? I mean, I think there's many ways you can go, but a lot of rock stars did burn out early for one reason or another, and a lot of them survived. And one of the reasons I think George survived, although he was hit by cancer and he was stabbed later on, is because he found spirituality, and it kind of helped to save him from the madness, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, he never felt pressured to come out with an album every year. And then, you know, by the late 70s, he did slow down. And, you know, I think it was perfectly fine. You know, people demand that their heroes keep churning out the music for them. And he seemed somewhat comfortable in stepping back like that. And not a lot of rock stars do that. You know, he was an ex-Beatle. So Lennon is one that did burn out. And Ringo as well. Ringo drank himself into recording contract oblivion, basically. So Harrison had some issues as well, but he was relaxing along the way, I think. So yeah, he seemed to have that part down.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with you about Lennon burning out. I prefer to think of it as a in a more positive light about taking time off to be with his son and stuff. But anyway, we digress.
That's another topic, John. We should have on the we should do for our viewers here. But yeah, that's a good one. That's the one of the things that will always be debated. Lennon's lost years from 75 to 80. What was he doing? But we know what Harrison was doing, and one of the things that, obviously he was going through the divorce proceedings were starting. I mean, that was kind of a long disillusion, that marriage to Patty. So that was in the background here. And, I know that people have, he was kind of going back and forth between following the spiritual guidelines of Krishna and being a rock star, back and forth. So he was really inconsistent, and people that were with him knew that. So I think that made it a little hard on him, not committing to one or the other, or only one foot in on one. And, you know, he never got out of the party lifestyle.
Yeah, well, he wasn't pretending to be Jesus Christ or anything. No one's perfect. No human is perfect. And we all have flaws, George included.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is though, if you're going to follow one of the religions, he was not. I think it was Chris O'Dell who said, joke, it was hard to tell whether he was dipping into his ever-present japa yoga prayer bag or the Coke bag. So this duality was kind of plagued him through his, so that's one of the things you can always be criticized for if you're going to be a bit on the preachy side. So that's where I think he gets most of his criticism from, talking the talk but not walking the walk. Do as I say, not as I do. So those are just the things that are pretty typical that you're going to find with people criticizing if you are not consistent.
True.
But we have the music. So let's get into the music because ultimately this is the bottom line is the music. So the first song on the album, "Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth," this was still kind of a surprising song to me after all these years because he followed up one of the biggest hits of the decade, "My Sweet Lord," yes, and with a similar kind of song thematically, but wholly his own. So and certainly deserving of the number one position on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah, but even this song, some people say he nicked the tune from "I Want You" by Bob Dylan, but that's only Gary Wright's keyboard part. But if you listen to the demo, there's not a hint of that tune. It's just because of the chord progression. Nicky or Gary, whoever was playing the keyboards, came up with that. But I tend to think this song is of more greater merit than "My Sweet Lord," just because he did write it wholly. Even though I think "My Sweet Lord" is a better record than "He's So Fine," it's pretty much without debate that he nicked the tune.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this song is a wonderful song. I have to believe that he was on his guard when doing these songs and writing these songs. So I never really saw the comparison of "Give Me Love" to any of Dylan's songs at all. So yeah, I agree with you there. And it's certainly a commercial song. People were waiting for it. Hits number one. It still is in that kind of "My Sweet Lord" vein, let's get together, everybody. Love is the answer. So, I mean, that was still a big message. And maybe this was the end of that era. That whole message, that whole hippie era was about to come crashing down, really in the States, especially. And this song may have been the last gasp of the 60s.
Yeah, quite possibly. And the lovely. Let's not forget the lovely guitar solo from George. And even Paul McCartney was complimentary about this track. I think he was asked about it and said, "Nice, nice." What did he say? Nice tempo changes and nice guitar. I think he said.
Yeah, I mean, I think George, he double tracks his slide guitar solo and very intricate. And that's one of his better moments on guitar in his solo years for sure.
Although whenever he did this song live, which wasn't very often, I think he got one of the guys in the band to do the lead for some reason.
Okay. Hmm.
Be farewell or one of the guys. I can't remember exactly who it was at the Albert Hall.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd have to check that. I don't remember either. All right, next song we've got Sumi Suyu Blues. Now, this song, I love the thing about Harrison getting ripped on in this album for being overly religious. He certainly didn't lose his sense of humor on this album. That's one of my favorite parts of this record, and certainly Sumi Suyu Blues has got some of that in there, even though it's sarcastic.
Yeah, it's kind of out of tune with the rest of the record, but I think it's refreshing to hear a song like this, and probably the closest to to a rocker outside of the title track on the album, and lovely slide playing, and as you say, good use of humor.
Yeah, I really like this song from start to finish. The recording of it, though, to me feels a little thin for some reason. He can't quite seem to get on record anyway. It's either, overblown Spectre or a little bit thin sounding. I don't know what it is, but he produced the album pretty much, and maybe production wasn't his strong suit. I mean, for being such a big fan of the group, the band, his music never really sounds like the band's recordings. And maybe he needed a producer that could deliver that.
Well, I think he gave this song, I think it was to Jesse Ed Davis before he recorded it. If you listen to Jesse's version, it's terrible
Oh, is it? I haven't heard that version.
compared to this. So I think I like this version. I mean, it's not doesn't maybe rock as hard as it could rock, but it's because it's a bit disjointed in the rhythm, isn't it? But
Hmm.
I think it kind of works mainly as a kind of humorous song on the Beatles breakup. Give you a bit of a break from the spirituality if you're listening to the record.
And this is one of those songs I would have loved to hear the Beatles record, if they stuck together another year or so. I mean, this would have been, I think, it would have sounded what I want to hear is what I would have been given probably, but because it's a strong song. And again, love the humor.
I think McCartney would have boycotted the track.
Maybe so, but I think he could have appreciated some of the humor, at least after some time, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay, we got The Light That Has Lighted the World. How do you like this one, John?
I love it. And do you listen to the demo? Just outstanding keyboards from one of the annoying things about all of these repackaged George Harrison albums, they never tell you who's playing on which track. They just give you the list of musicians. And I could guess if it's Nicky Hopkins or Gary Wright. I'd probably guess it was Nicky on this track, but still, it'd be nice to know. Maybe Gary plays the organ and Nicky plays the piano, but I don't think it's that simple. But I love the musicianship on this track. I love the melody, and it's heartfelt and lovely little short guitar solo. Um, One of my favorites.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Nicky Hopkins because the piano, it reminds me of Jealous Guy.
Yeah,
I think he's copying a little lick there. And yeah, good song, short and sweet. Some of Harrison's work, some of his songs get a little long for my taste. This one does not. And yeah, I do like the mellow slide guitar on it as well. So speaking of mellow, well, we got the next song, which is like one of the perfect pop songs that George ever did, and that's "Don't Let Me Wait Too Long." And this has always been people's favorite, one of their favorite tracks on the album. And it's a shame more wasn't done with this track.
yeah. Everyone talks about this as the lost single, but it does sort of slow down every sort of after every verse for the before the in for the chorus. And if you're playing a song on the radio, you don't really want it to slow down like that. So I'm not sure, commercially speaking, if it was a hit single, but there's certain parts of it which are very commercial. And I'm happy for it to be a hidden album track that no one talks about. Um, Lovely tune, heartfelt words. Not sure what it's about. Don't make me wait too long. Probably about God more than happiness.
Yeah, yeah, it could be. The first thing I would say about this is I think it could have been a great single. Obviously, if you're coming off of a huge million selling number one hit, that always gives the next single momentum. I think this song would have been a top 20 song, probably. Maybe would have hit top 10 based on the momentum, but I think generally speaking, it's a singable song and one of his strongest melodies. It's maybe got a couple slow spots, like you say, but it was slated to be the next single. But and I didn't know this until researching it, is that it may have been canceled because of a similar sound to the song When I'm Dead and Gone by McGinnis Flint. And I compared this, I don't hear that at all. But again, maybe Harrison was just being careful because of being sued for My Sweet Lord. I don't know.
Just a quick thing. I mean, obviously, he wasn't following up My Sweet Lord. He wouldn't have been following up My Sweet Lord here, would it? Because Bangladesh came in between, which I know it's not one of your favorite singles, is it?
No, no, I meant by following up My Sweet Lord, he had the copyright issue with that song. So I think he was being careful. Um, if anybody brought this up that it sounded like another song, he maybe said, well, let's not even release it as a single.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily need two singles off an album. I mean, with obviously with well, the time he did Cloud Nine, he did one, two, three, at least three singles, if not four. And you know that in the 80s, it was very sort of commonplace to release four or five singles off an album. I just don't see the point, especially if the fans have already got it.
Yeah.
Unless you B-side, which you don't. I don't think he had any extra tracks to put out as B-sides, so it wouldn't have been any extra material.
Yeah, I think it's pretty normal in those days. Two singles off an album was fairly common. And I would have liked to have that be another hit single for him just to say, look, he's got these hits. I think it's a missed opportunity, but yeah, it's great as an album track. And the other thing I heard, I don't know if you've heard this, and I couldn't find the citation for it in preparing for this video, but people had said it to him that it sounded kind of Beatley, and he didn't like that idea, and that was another reason on that side of the scale to not release it. But I don't know if that's true. I can't believe that's true.
Well, I couldn't believe that of George, but I don't recognize that citation either, but I can believe it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's other Beatley sounding songs on here too. So I mean, he'd have to not release several songs, but anyway, yeah, one of my favorites from him, a kind of a deep cut, and he follows that up on side one with "Who Can See It." And this is one of the songs I do not like on the album. And I think it's a little bit, the orchestration's a little over the top trying to do something with it, but for me, this song doesn't really go anywhere. And sometimes George's vocal is just really weak. And this is one of those times.
Yeah, again, I think it was Bob Worthington who pointed out that the song was in too high a register for George's voice. So he's definitely straining to hit some of the notes. But it's a decent enough song. And actually, he did do this song once at the beginning of the 74 tour, but
Oh,
I've
did he?
yet to find a version of it on YouTube, even an audio. There was one up there, but it was just a studio version, um, pretending to be a live version.
Okay. All right. Well, then we finish off side one with the title track, Living in the Material World. This is another one of his, I guess, closest to what a rock song would be on the album. And again, we have the humor, and this is another fun song. And he's kind of taking the piss out of himself a little bit with some of the tabla and little sitar drone and things as well.
Yeah, this is a good pounding piano song. And George didn't often do piano-based songs, did he? Bangladesh, this one, couple on extra texture, but not often. And it's a good one, fun one to play, by the way, on the piano. Nice, easy chords. The only problem with the song, if we're being ultra critical, is pronouncing the word material is a little bit tricky, and it doesn't quite scan, does it? But
Yeah, I guess
I,
that's true.
I'll forgive him that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, I think this song, it's a good rock song, but instrumentally wise, for some reason it's one of those, it just feels kind of specterish and it doesn't really do George's vocals justice or the instrumentation. I don't know. He's trying to make a big sounding, and I just don't think that's, like you said earlier, I don't think that's his forte.
Yeah, but I think this song is a welcome relief after the two or three ballads that preceded it.
Mm. Mm.
It's a strong closer to side one.
Well, I like side one much more than side two. Side two's got a couple clinkers in there that I don't particularly care for. It really slows down. The first song, "The Lord Loves the One That Loves the Lord," I think is actually a very good song, a slow ballad, and it always, I think Elton John stole this for sad songs. Say So Much. What do you think?
I
Finally, we
hadn't
get
thought.
somebody stealing George's song.
I don't know. I just can't get past this the sort of slightly preachy, weak lyrics on this one. Um, Especially that the line. I don't like the line, "The Lord helps those who help themselves," because that doesn't sound right, does it? You know.
Well, yeah, help themselves to what exactly? I mean, Alan Klein was helping himself to a little bit. I mean, I don't know that the Lord loved Klein too much, but I understand. I mean, it gets a little bit, yeah, it gets a little bit self-serving in areas, and he's always done that in some of his, even in some of his
Very
Beatles songs.
very repetitive as well. He's repeating that chorus about three or four times towards the end of the song, and then thankfully the song is completely justified by the superb long guitar solo, easily the best bit of the song.
Yeah, good slide. He does it justice.
You listen to the demo on the outtake album. He said he hadn't decided what to do with the instrumental bit at the end, and he was even saying to the sax player, maybe you should do a sax solo. But I'm glad he chose to do a guitar solo because this is a George Harrison album, not a Bobby Keys album being
Yeah,
performed.
I think you're right. I think there's more guitar in this album, and he doesn't rely on some of these outside brass players that I don't think suit his music that well. So and there's not a lot of guys playing on this record. Actually, there's just maybe five guys. He's got the two drummers. I don't know who drums on what,
So
but
it's
it's
not Bobby Keys, it's Jim Horn on this album.
yeah, Jim Horn, correct. So yeah, it's more scaled back, which I think is good. Now, the next song, "Be Here Now," is the one I have a problem with. This song will guaranteed to put you to sleep. You know, um, some of the lyrics, "Why try to live a life that isn't real?" Hey, thanks, George. You know, so yeah, this is one of the ones I could do without.
I find it quite peaceful and relaxing in the same way that I find writings on the wall from somewhere in England similarly
Mm-hmm.
relaxing. And I like the sentiment, you know, forget about the past, just be here now. I think it works even if you're not into Hare Krishna
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. Um, it is slow, but it's quite haunting. I mean, if you listen to the outtake, it's even more haunting, if anything, because it's got no embellishments and no harmony. It's just a straight demo.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can see the song is I prefer "Be Here Now" to the next song. That's for sure. Because there are some nice things about "Be Here Now." I would say that it is a little bit. This second side gets a little bit slow for me. And "Try Some Buy Some," which I think might be the worst song on the album, especially how he sings it. I mean, it's a horrible vocal delivery. It just almost should have been done by Ronnie Spector. And yeah, I don't know. It's strange that he actually wrote it because he probably sang it in order to write it, and it just doesn't suit him.
Well, again, he this was a leftover track which Ronnie Spector had tried a hand at, and so he had this beautiful string arrangement, um, which was I think John Barham again, the same guy who did All Christmas Past, and I think Phil Spector gets a production credit on this song, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because again, the subject matter is different from spirituality. So we got the Beatles breakup song on side one, and you've got this song about drugs on side two. David Bowie did an interesting cover of this on his Reality album, which was quite interesting.
I
Um,
have not heard that one.
if you want a version without the strings, then go to the outtakes disc, and you can hear a version where he tried it with slide guitar. Didn't quite work, in my opinion, but it's very interesting to hear. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, I think it's a decent enough tune, and if you read the chords on the sheet music, it's incredibly complicated chords, quite tricky to play, all kinds of diminish this and diminish that.
Wow. Yeah, and his vocals all over the place. So he has a tendency, and I want to bring this up because I noticed this in other of his songs. He's kind of a Hoagie Carmichael fan, and Carmichael does the same thing. Carmichael, who's not a very gifted singer, great songwriter, but he has these vocal gymnastics and very difficult chord changes for a singer to follow. You've got to be a really good singer to do it. So I think George, maybe I know he was a fan of Carmichael's, but maybe that's where that comes from. And I give him an A for effort. I mean, but it maybe would have been better for somebody else to sing. But also, it doesn't seem like he's got a ton of material for this album. A couple songs, this was a leftover track. And after 2.5 years, or almost 3 years since All Things Must Pass, he really is low on material, I think. And he had to pull this one out.
I don't mind it. I don't object to it. I think it's quite pleasant. I mean, again, the register is probably too high for his voice, but then he wasn't about to go and re-record all those strings, was he? So he had to
Mm,
use that backing track. I'm not sure if they had the technology back in those days to bring it down a key or two,
mm,
but maybe they did, but they just didn't bother.
Could be. Yeah. Don't know. Don't know. Now, the last song, I'm kind of surprised he ended the album on another ballad here. And this is another song I typically skip over when I listen to this record. Some nice guitar work, but maybe Living in
So
the Material World should have been the closing track. I don't know.
you're talking about the penultimate song, "The Day the World Gets Round."
Oh, I skipped that one. Sorry. I skipped
Okay.
that one. That is The Day the World Gets Round is a song I think is a fun song. That's one of the uplifting songs I've always liked of his, and one of the songs that always brought me back to this album. And so I think it's one of his more uplifting songs.
Well, yeah, uplifting, but written the day after the Bangladesh concert when he was wondering when the world is going to get round to being a better place, blah, blah. But did you spot the Harrison humor in the title?
The day the world. Well, a little bit, yeah. So it gets, yeah, the double entendre there of getting it round and
Yeah.
getting around to doing the right thing. Yeah.
Well, and being round as opposed to flat. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, a good song. I didn't know he wrote that after the Bangladesh concert. Did not know that.
I think that's in the, if you, have you got the I'm in Mine book where he goes through every track of this?
I do not have that. That's one book I don't have. It's on my list to get.
There's two versions. You can get the basic version, which came out in 1982. Well, unless you want to spend 1,000 quid getting the signed version. But there were two commercially available versions, the standard one in 1982 and then an expanded one which came out a few years ago, which takes it up to the present day, or takes it up to Brainwashed and Summer in England and Gone Troppo, which
Hmm.
Olivia put together. But you
Okay.
should probably be one to go for if you're wondering which one to get.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, I should check that one out. Because I'm a fan of Brainwashed, so to have some discussion on those tracks would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think Olivia managed to find the lyric sheets to all of the latter day songs, so it's a bit incomplete, but it's still very interesting.
Hmm.
Um,
All right, then we'll.
did you like the production on the day the world gets round? It's kind of
I
you could
do.
you tell he sort of was a student of Spector because he's using Spector-esque strings or production, or John Barham maybe esque strings because he did all the arrangements, didn't he? Um,
Yeah, it's kind of reminds me of one of the songs production I really like on All Things Must Pass is I'd Have You Anytime. It doesn't sound so big and suffocating. The instruments can breathe a bit more, and that's how this song reminds me that at least the production. So yeah, well done.
yeah, move to the closer, which you're not too fond of, you said.
Correct. That is all. Yeah, it's another to close on this slow song that I think is one of the weaker tracks of the album. I was a little surprised. I probably would have preferred or would have expected maybe the title track to close the record. I don't know. This is just not one I like to play. I typically skip it.
Well, it's got a lovely guitar solo in it, and I quite like the lyrics, although they're very romantic. And again, he's probably singing to God as opposed to a woman at this stage of his life, although it could be taken either way. Uh, and I like the words of the middle eight. Times I find it hard to say with useless words getting in my way. Silence often says much more than trying to say what's been said before. I think that's quite a good
Hmm.
line.
That is a good line. And you're right, some of the guitar playing, the slide playing is nice. So that does help the song quite a bit. And as far as who he's singing to, you get this. He's always kind of said that these love songs are really to God, but I wonder. I think oftentimes the inspiration is probably a woman, just like the song
Yeah.
Something. He always started sidestepping that. But whatever. I mean, however the listener takes it, it's really up to them to interpret it their own way, I guess.
Well, I mean, I've heard many times the October 69 interview with David Wigg that George did, where he's asked specifically what was the inspiration behind something, and he says Patty. So that was the month after the song was released. So I would take it with a pinch of salt when later on he said nothing to do with Patty, nothing to do with Patty. I don't
Correct.
believe.
Yeah, I mean, don't buy that for a second. I mean, did you have a look at Patty in the 60s? Man, I'm surprised. There's a reason there was lots of songs written about her.
Yeah, something in the way she moves. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Um, by the way, have you heard Harry Nilsson's cover of this song? That is all.
no, I have not. What album is that on?
That's the way it is, 1976.
Okay, yeah, I don't have that album.
Same album where he does a superb cover of Randy Newman's song "Sail Away."
Hmm.
So that I like. The album's a bit mixed, but those two tracks are great.
Yeah, I'm still delving into the 70s Nilsson. I finally, I don't know, some years back, I started just getting all the 60s stuff, and I don't know why I waited so long, but boy, am I glad I did. What a voice.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was great up until well, I was going to say up until Pussycat Spin. That's when he lost his voice, and then that's the way it is. The album I'm talking about, I thought was decent, and Nielsen from '77 was decent, but there's a lot of mediocre albums in between, and one after Flash Harry. So just be a bit careful. I mean, give him a chance, but yeah, don't expect
Yeah.
miracles in every album because you're not going to get it, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm dying to do a 60s history on him, and typically, I depending how far the artist goes into the 70s, I kind of sum it up more briefly. And I'm already kind of imagining doing that with his, at least mid 70s to the end of his life. But we'll see. I haven't delved into all that, but he's certainly, like everybody, they've got their time, and it's too bad he blew his voice out. That what a wonderful, what a great voice. That's something you got to protect.
Yeah, although I think his broken voice really works on a track like Many Rivers to Cross, where he's just screaming the vocal. Lennon's chuckling to himself in the producer's chair, thinking, "Go for it, Harry. This sounds like Primal Scream John, but it's Primal Scream Harry." And I think it really works on that song.
Hmm.
But in general, it was a shame. You're right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We lost him kind of soon. Lost him really before he died because he was, a pretty heavy drinker, I guess. But what are you gonna do? The rock and roll lifestyle will get you. Okay, so there are some bonus tracks that I really like a lot, and a B-side or two. So the bonus tracks typically, well, Bangladesh was released, obviously the single to promote the concert, and a song I've never really liked, but obviously the sentiment is good, and that was a hit. I don't know, any comments, quick comments on Bangladesh?
Is that a bonus track on Spotify? Because it's not on the.
Well, I'm trying to think here. What version? I don't have it on any of my stuff. I just have the vinyl and the original CD, which it's not on. I think it may have been a bonus track on one of the reissues in about 10 years ago.
Anniversary has Miss O'Dell as the B-side. That's a bonus track plus all the outtakes. Um,
Hmm.
and this 2006 version has Deep Blue, the
Okay.
B-side, Bangladesh as a bonus
Yeah.
track. Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
might be mistaken about that as a bonus track, but I thought it was worth mentioning because it doesn't have a place anywhere else, and I guess this makes some sense.
yeah, I mean, but going back to your question, so Bangladesh, yeah, I don't think it's a great song by any means, but the sentiment outweighed the need for it to be a great song, and it was rightly performed at the end of the Bangladesh concert. Um, but I liked your comment about the weakest melody of a top 20 song ever or something.
Yeah, I stand by that. I'm shocked that he didn't come up with a better melody or do. I just I'm shocked how poor it is. But again, it's not really about the melody, is it? It's about the actual event and about a bigger issue. So, but still, I mean, he's an ex-Beatle. That's you can't you just can't give us that shitty of a melody. Unacceptable.
Yeah.
Now
Well,
the beat.
I think the B-side Deep Blue is much better as a
Mm.
track. I think it's a beautiful song. Could he could have saved it for this album if he was didn't want to give it away, but I'm glad he gave it away because in those days artists did give you an extra song on the B-side, which is good. Miss O'Dell, the B-side of Give Me Love, I think is an amusing song and good to hear George laughing, not always being so serious. I like that one.
Well, Deep Blue is perhaps one of my favorite solo songs of George. It sounds so Beatley to me. It almost feels like, and even the way it was recorded should have been on a Beatle record. And I think he wrote it, I think it was maybe 1970 when his parents were dying. So it was in that final days of the Beatles anyway. But it's one of my favorite songs by him. A great lyric, well played. And I just think he nails it with this song.
Yeah, it was written just before his mother passed because his father lived up until 78, I think.
Well,
But
yeah.
another interesting thing is the similarity to the track "Soft-Hearted Hannah" from the self-titled album.
Hmm.
Notice the similarity of the Deep Blue and this one.
Hmm. And as far as Miss O'Dell, yeah, I that's also another fun song. I just love hearing that song. It makes me laugh. It makes me smile. And to hear George having fun with it, I think his music, I think some people think that he takes himself a little too seriously with the religious aspect. And I don't know, I would rather have him balance some of that more with songs like Miss O'Dell, you know. But and again, here this is just on a B side that most people never heard.
No, I think it's a fun little track, nice little nugget for fans to discover if they haven't heard it already.
Good little chestnut.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other, I'm just going to jump ahead here. One of the, I guess you call it a bonus track. I'm not sure what disc it's on, but the version he does of Sunshine Life for Me, that's on the 50th anniversary box set.
Yeah, that's on the deluxe box set. I've only got the double vinyl, and it's not
Okay.
on here, but it's on Spotify, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
To be honest, I didn't really like that track when Ringo did it, and I don't like the demo either, so I could do without it, to be honest. You're going to say you like it, right?
I do like that one. It's just another fun song. And I like the songs that George wrote for Ringo. And for the life of me, I can't understand why they didn't collaborate more. Because I think there's just a good, not just the camaraderie, but I think George understands how to write for Ringo, and they're typically lighthearted and fun songs that don't take themselves so seriously, but also are a bit wry and have this sardonic humor to them as well. And this is just one of those songs. I was glad to hear a George version of this.
But a bit of a gulf in quality between the other track that Ringo wrote for the Ringo album, Photograph, and Sunshine Life for Me. I mean, it's
True,
not.
very true.
But yeah, okay, it's fun enough. The band are playing along on it. I mean, on the Ringo version, not on the demo.
Yeah, so the when we preparing for this video, you were talking to me about the 50th anniversary edition, and I went to Spotify and listened to some of the remixes and stuff, which I think they were the remixes are good as opposed to not getting what I really wanted with the All Things Must Pass remixes, which you couldn't mix out a lot of the bombastic specterism. In this case, that wasn't the case here. So nice, nice mixes, I think, and nice separation of the instruments, just a little more airy. I like them.
Yeah, I mean, I can almost listen to disc two on here as an alternative version of the album because I think all of the demo versions have merit. With some, what it's like with some demo versions, you hear them once and then you just go back to the original immediately. But with this album, I think it's quite interesting to hear a kind of stripped down version of some of the songs without the strings or without all of the instrumentation. It's quite revealing.
Yeah, I agree. There's no way that Harrison would ever release an album that sounded demo-like. I mean, because there was expectations of him, and he's not going to pull a Neil Young. And I think it's a little too bad that he didn't try to do that and do more demos and just kind of go a little more underground and be a little more rootsy and get himself a band like Crazy Horse to back him up, and that would rock him up a bit. I mean, I would have liked to seen him do that for at least an album. And what happened, I guess, after this album, we've got Dark Horse and Extra Texture, which are just kind of pale imitations of this album, as opposed to trying to maybe stripping back. And I think that would have been a great move for him career-wise, just to strip back.
Well, the problem is when George has ever tried to rough it or do things quickly, he's I think his voice has been exposed for. I'm thinking particularly of the Japan tour where his just voice is not up to scratch, and I think he's a better musician and singer when he's taking his time and to lay down a really good vocal and double tracking it or doing harmony with it or whatever. If he's doing the Prince's Trust concert or even the one I saw, the Royal Albert Hall, is just a bit exposed as a
Mm.
vocal. And I think unlike Neil Young, he can get away with his sort of screaming vocal with Crazy Horse and be a balladeer as well. I think George suits the softer style more.
Yeah, I think he could have done both, though. I think he could have paid strict attention to a vocal delivery and double tracking his vocals, all while having kind of a stripped down backing. And I think that's where his lyrics really shine through because he's not the greatest singer. He can certainly deliver depending on the range that he chooses to write in. But I mean, his lyrics are solid. I mean, he's always had fine lyrics. So I think he could have maybe had it both ways, but didn't go that way.
Well, there's a lot of what ifs, aren't there? I mean, I found it a bit disappointing that we didn't get any new material from George for the last between the second Wilburys album and when he died. He had all these songs, he'd recorded them, or he'd done demos, but he just didn't feel the need, and that's his prerogative. He didn't feel the need to go into the studio and do an album, which is fine. Um, I think he'd overdone it with Cloud Nine. He'd got too much publicity and thought, bugger this, I'm not going to, I'm going to go back to my garden.
Yeah, I remember that time period, and I was thrilled for him to have a hit. And that album at the time, I mean, I really welcomed the Cloud Nine album, and it seemed like he had been gone for forever. It was only 5 years since Gone Troppo, but yeah, I mean that he did, but he did the Wilburys thing right after that, and that maybe helped him hide a little bit amongst other band members. And obviously, the Wilbury project was certainly worthwhile and very successful. I don't know. I guess I don't know what he would have done in the '90s had he done something. He had some of those songs ready. I don't know what that would have sounded like, but don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very generous for him to give Handle with Care to the Wilburys because I think it's one of his top-notch best songs. I'm not sure, obviously, the song is co-credited to all five of them, but I think George came up with the original verse at least. Um,
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I was so disappointed that that song wasn't. It could have been on, as I recall, I think it was going to be a B-side of a 12-inch single from
it was.
Cloud Nine, wasn't it? It
Yeah,
was
and
going
then
to.
suddenly thought this is too good to be a B-side. Um, so let's make it into a full, I don't know, let's do, well, that's, he got Bob Dylan and Tom Petty to help him record it. And then the thing evolved. And I think, I'm not sure when Roy Orbison came in to sing his bit, but turned into a different animal, probably for better rather than for worse. But it's just a shame that George doesn't get the credit for that song as much as he probably should do, because it's such a glorious gem of a song before he even started giving it to the others, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he made a mistake. And he's very generous. Obviously, given stuff to Ringo. Um, yeah, I've always felt that as a solo artist, he could have that would have been another bigger hit. I think as the Wilburys, that might have been top 20. I can't remember where it charted. But to me, to my ears, it's just so Beatley that the Wilburys take a little of the Beatley stuff feel out of it. I thought it would have been a bigger hit with George solo, and imagine having a potential second number one on the Cloud Nine album. I mean, it just makes that album so much stronger if that song is on it. And I just kind of lamented the fact that he didn't do it.
Yeah, and it would have been nice to have a self-penned number one rather than a cover of Rudy Clark's 1957 song or whatever it was. Got my mind set on you, which is another kettle of fish.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about the packaging.
Oh yeah, let's do that. I forgot about that because this has got an interesting cover.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, isn't it?
Yeah, it's called The Striking Front Cover Image. This is by the photographer's Wilkes. He used a Kirlian photograph of Harrison's hand holding a Hindu medallion taken at UCLA. And what
And
kind of and you've got, yeah, that I don't have. That's the inner sleeve with the lyrics, isn't it?
you don't have that? Your
I don't,
copy doesn't have that?
I bought my copy, oh boy, used in, the late 80s probably, and it didn't come with that, unfortunately. So I got robbed of that cool painting.
Well, you should look out for another copy with the full works because I think it's worth having. And this is an interesting Yugoslav copy on the green apple.
Oh, that's very cool. Yugoslavian. Yeah, I'm kind
Yeah.
of a sucker for the Apple labels, although I don't seek them out much for the solo stuff, except for a couple of Ringo albums. But that's a sharp looking cover or label.
I've got a German copy on the green apple as well.
Wow. That's interesting. There's no writing above the record hole, though. That's you don't see that too often.
Yeah, the title is below the spindle and
Hmm.
the name.
So how many copies of that album have you got?
I've got two Yugoslav. You're going to ask me to give you a spare one, aren't you?
No, that's okay. I mean, I don't
I
collect too
might.
many.
Well, I've got two Yugoslavian ones on green apple, one German on green apple, about two UK ones, and I've got the new 50th anniversary double vinyl, and then a couple of CD versions. This one
Mhm.
and this one from 2006, which has a DVD to go with it, with live versions of "Give Me Love" and from Japan, and an alternative version of Miss O'Dell without the laughing, but just on the DVD, not on a CD, which is quite annoying. But anyway, and then a demo of Sumi Suyu Blues, and then a very interesting little featurette of footage of them pressing the Living in the Material album at the EMI record plant. I think it must have been the one in Hayes in Middlesex. And you can just see all the multiple covers coming off the production line. That's pretty cool.
Ah, did not know that. Yeah, I do have the demo of Sumisuyu Blues. That's a good one. I'm not sure where I got that because all I've got is the original album, and then I've got the first CD, which came out whenever this came out. I forget, but I was quick to buy this on CD.
Well, I'm glad you've begun to appreciate it a bit more because you were quite scathing about it until quite recently, weren't you? So
Yeah, I was in preparing for this video, I, listened to it several times and instead of, I would I separated the tracks I don't like and listened to those separately and just listened to it a couple different ways. And I found that the tracks I did like um, stood out, and listening to the whole thing as a whole, they they outshined all the songs I don't like. So it just worked together as a whole a little bit better. So I do appreciate it a little bit more.
You remember that feature where my current CD player doesn't have it, but in the old days, it used to be a feature where you could put on an album and just press the random button, and it would play the tracks in a random order.
Hmm.
Sort of could actually help you appreciate an album in another light to hear it in a different track order. But I seem to have lost the facility to do that on my CD player.
Yeah, I hate all this new technology. It's making everything actually more of a pain in the ass for me to do. You know, some of the old technology was just better when it came to that kind of stuff. But yeah, I hear you. So what's to come next from the Harrison camp? I mean, we had this repackaging, and there's a couple albums that Dark Horse and Extra Texture are generally considered two of his weaker efforts, followed by two of my favorites, 33 and a Third and the self-titled album from 79. What would you want to see? Because I know there it doesn't seem to be a lot of outtakes or a lot of tracks that were recorded and not released. What would you want to see?
Well, there's two things, Matt. There's the '74 tour, which I'm pretty sure they shot footage of.
Hmm.
If it's weak vocally, I just want to see it and see Billy Preston, see the whole band, Willie Weeks. I just think it would be a fun, and they gave you a tantalizing snippet of it in the Scorsese film, didn't they? Of him performing What Is Life. So that's out there. The other thing I'd really like to see is a expanded Summer in England with the four tracks that were left off, none of which have been released on commercial CD. I mean, you could buy them for 300 quid back in 1992 on a Songs of George Harrison book, which came with a CD with the four tracks on it, but never. And on Spotify, you can get Flying Hour on
Hmm.
the end of Somewhere in England. You can get Tears on the World at the end of 33 and a Third. But kind of like to have them on a CD, you know?
Yeah, I thought they were compiled somewhere, but apparently not for some reason. I had those on a bootleg, and yeah, I can. It seems like those should be compiled in an easier way to listen to them.
Well, I think Layer's Head was released on the B side of Got My Mind Set Anew on vinyl, but never saw the light of day on CD. But when I actually had the fortune to meet George outside the Bob Dylan concert at Wembley in '87, that's what I said to him. I said, "Like your new single, George." He said, lying through his teeth because it was got my mind set on you. He liked it. And then I said, "I'm glad you released Lay His Head on the B side. That's an excellent track." And he looked back and smiled and said, "Yeah, that was to save using up some of the new ones."
Okay.
So that was my conversation with George Harrison.
Well, hey, at least you had one. That's what do you say in passing? You got like 5 or 10 seconds, and you got a
Well,
response from him. You got a response from him. That's impressive.
there were two people walking towards the gate from a little mini metro car. And the first person I recognized was Jeff Lynne because he had his distinctive curly hair and glasses. And then I
Yeah.
thought, hold on, George Harrison with him. But they were walking really fast and they didn't stop. They just walked straight through the gate. So I had to say what I said very quickly. And he didn't stop. He just looked back over his shoulder and said what he said. So,
Mm. Well, it's nice that you did that.
yeah, he could have just ignored me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Jeff Lynne is grinning his head off. There goes a real fan, George.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess as far as Harrison releases, I don't know what I would want. I still like, the self-titled album a lot and Brainwashed. And, I don't know, maybe they would do some kind of special thing for Cloud 9. That seems like it's kind of a standalone. I was always hoping for a George Harrison demo version of by himself of Handle with Care, and I'm sure they could make one. But that would be a nice addition to a Cloud 9 release. But I guess we've gotten all we're going to get from him, which is great. I mean, I typically listen to George Harrison. I have a couple playlists and I got them on my computer. And occasionally people that are Beatle fans or kind of people that I are more are acquaintances of mine that like some of the solo stuff. And sometimes I'll just print or I used to just run out a CD for them of some of these more obscure tracks, hidden tracks or like deep cuts that a lot of people don't know. So that's pretty much what I listen to of George Harrison, his deep cuts that I really like.
But by the way, I wouldn't be averse to hearing an expanded Dark Horse box set with a few stripped down versions of Ding Dong without the horns, for example. There's already a nice demo of Dark Horse out there, which I think
Hmm.
was a bonus CD.
Yeah, that I love
Um,
that demo.
yeah,
Yeah, I love it. And I think a Dark Horse box set could come with a tour, some of
yeah,
that stuff. I mean, you could do something really special with that.
yeah. I mean, it's the same with Back to the Egg Wings. That should come out with the '79 tour footage and all the videos they did for that album.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. I mean, I mean, in the if you are struggling to find information to go on in a box set to pad it out to make it, bigger, in those two instances, they've got everything you could possibly want, and fans would eat that up.
Yeah, I just wonder if Danny and Olivia are just worried that the '74 tour footage is a bit ropey. Maybe that's a reason. I don't know. I haven't. The only versions you can hear of it are really bad quality on YouTube, bootlegs, and I don't think that would do it justice. If you had what's his name, the New Zealand guy,
Oh,
Peter Jack,
Peter Jackson, yeah.
you had him work on it. I'm sure he could make something of it.
Yeah, good question. I mean, maybe it doesn't sound as good. I don't know. I've heard reviews that don't rip on his vocals as much. I mean, it's mixed. There's got to be, depending on how many were recorded, you might get some good renditions depending on what city he's in. I don't know how much they filmed or recorded. Probably not everything, but I mean, collectors got to have stuff. I'm sure there's like mixing board recordings from every show somewhere, but I don't know.
It's just historically important for it to be out there, even if we're not going to like every rendition. For example, I didn't like it when he changed the lyrics to something and changed the lyrics to "In My Life" and "While My Guitar Gently Smiles," he turned it into or something.
Yeah.
But you know, I still think it's interesting because he was going through a divorce, so he didn't want to sing. You're asking me instead of
My Love Grow, yeah.
he said, "I hope so." I think he says, "I hope so," because he was just starting his relationship with Olivia, wasn't he? So that was quite a nice touch. But I just think, yeah, his vocals were strained, should we say? But it would
Yeah.
just be very interesting to hear.
I agree. I think it's of historical importance in his career, his only tour. I'm sure they could put something together that would be acceptable. And we all know that he was losing his voice. And I mean, there's excuses that make sense, but uh, I don't doubt, doesn't look like we'll ever see it. It seems to me that that would be the thing to focus on in George Harrison's career as some kind of special release. There isn't much else.
Yeah, and the other song he did on the again just on the first night of the tour. I forget where the first night was. Up in Canada somewhere. Could have been Vancouver. But he did the Lord that loves the one. The Lord love
The Lord
what is
loves
it?
the one that loves the Lord.
That's the one. Yeah, he did that once and he did Who Can See It and he dropped both of them
Hmm.
immediately. It must have not sounded very good.
Hmm.
Um, a bit like when George was in Japan, he tried out Love Comes to Everyone once and then
Okay.
dropped,
Hmm.
which is a shame because it's a great track, but maybe it just didn't sound very good live. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Hmm. Well, like I say, maybe if this is all we get from George, it's still a really good catalog of music, and I can't complain.
I don't think I need any more copies of Material World.
I thought you might be looking for one from India or something, isn't?
Um, probably might have one somewhere in the other room. Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
looking for a German pressing of Dark Horse on the Green Apple,
Oh,
but
really?
that's
Okay.
it's quite pricey on Discogs.
What
But
does that go for?
oh, we're talking 100 quid or something.
Really?
Yeah,
So I've got when I got the CD 20 years ago, I don't think I've played the actual album since and pulled it out, but it's just how my listening habits are.
and it probably wouldn't be an album you'd be following the lyrics avidly of because you'd be getting too pissed off, and so
Well, I don't mind some of the religious stuff at all. Like I said, I find it some of the philosophical teachings that go with it, I find pretty interesting. His the way he writes the lyrics around it are typically pretty good. So I don't mind that like some people do. It's some of I guess for me, I'm more of a music guy first, lyrics guy second. So I'm listening to the melody and the actual the instrumental tracks. So some of the stuff on here that I don't care for, that's the stuff I would skip. There's about 4 songs or so that I find that I would could do without and would substitute the bonus tracks for, I guess. All right,
okay.
John.
So we'll think about what to do next. I'm not sure what's out there, but we've done two George, so we need to do another. We've done two
We've
John,
we've done to
two Paul.
Paul as well. So I guess Ringo's maybe up next. What do we do of Ringo? I've got an idea, so we'll have to talk about it off camera. But Ringo's stuff is there's a couple bright spots here and there, but for me, not as much. And then obviously the other guys. I mean, there's plenty of Paul and George stuff to still go through, and a couple John's things too. So there's plenty we can do. I'm sure the people watching will start to give us a few requests.
Yep.
We should take a poll.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks for having me, Matt.
Anytime, John. Pleasure as always. And we'll see you back here on Pop Goes the 60s very soon. Thanks for watching.